Memphis, Tennessee, December 25, 1962. The children's ward at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital was quiet on Christmas morning. Most of the kids were too sick to celebrate. Their families sat beside hospital beds, trying to make the day feel special, despite the tubes and machines and medicine. Then at 8 a.m., Elvis Presley walked in wearing a Santa hat, carrying a guitar and bags of presents. What happened in the next 6 hours became the most emotional Christmas in St. Jude's history. The Christmas nobody wanted Christmas 1962 was hard for Elvis. His mother Gladys had died 4 years earlier in August 1958. The pain had dulled somewhat with time, but the holidays always brought it back sharp and raw. Elvis had been home at Graceland, trying to find some meaning in the holiday season. The house was decorated. His father Vernon had made sure of it, but Elvis couldn't bring himself to celebrate. Every ornament, every tradition, every Christmas song reminded him of his mother. "You need to do something today," Vernon told Elvis on Christmas Eve. "Sitting here being sad isn't what your mama would want." "I don't feel like celebrating," Elvis said. "Then don't celebrate for yourself. Celebrate for someone else. Do something that would make your mama proud." Elvis thought about that conversation all night. His mother had always been generous, always thinking about people who had less than they did. Even when the Presley family was poor, and they'd been very poor for most of Elvis's childhood, Gladys would find ways to help others. "We might not have much," Gladys used to say, "but there's always someone who has less, and if we can help them, we should." Elvis remembered Christmases when his mother had given away food they could barely afford to spare, given clothes to families who had even less, invited neighbors who were alone to share their meager holiday meal. What would his mother want him to do this Christmas? The answer came to Elvis around 3 a.m. She'd want him to help kids who were suffering, kids who were in hospitals, away from home, scared and lonely. Elvis made some phone calls that morning. By 7 a.m., he had permission to visit the children's ward at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, a hospital that treated kids with catastrophic diseases, many of them terminal. The hospital had opened in Memphis earlier that year, founded by entertainer Danny Thomas with a mission. No child would be turned away because their family couldn't afford treatment. By 8 a.m., Elvis was walking through the hospital doors, dressed in a simple black suit with a red Santa hat, arms full of presents, guitar slung over his shoulder, ready to give these kids a Christmas they'd never forget. The ward that needed hope. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital was still new in 1962, having opened its doors just months earlier. It specialized in treating children with cancer and other life-threatening diseases that other hospitals couldn't or wouldn't treat. Most of the children at St. Jude had been turned away from other hospitals because their families couldn't afford treatment. St. Jude's revolutionary policy that no family would ever receive a bill meant that children from the poorest families finally had access to cutting-edge care. But in 1962, childhood cancer was still largely a death sentence. The treatments were harsh, the survival rates were low, and hope was a rare commodity on the children's ward. Christmas on the children's ward was a bittersweet time. The hospital staff tried to make it festive, decorations in the hallways, a small tree in the common room, but it was hard to celebrate when so many children were suffering. That Christmas morning, there were 23 children on the ward. Some were well enough to be in the playroom. Others were confined to their beds, too weak to move, hooked up to IVs and monitors. Nurse Sarah Mitchell was on duty that Christmas. She'd volunteered to work the holiday shift so nurses with families could be home. Sarah had been at St. Jude since it opened, and she loved the children deeply, but holidays were always hard. "How do you make Christmas special for a 6-year-old with leukemia?" Sarah later said in an interview. "How do you tell a child they're getting another round of chemotherapy on Christmas Day? How do you watch parents try to smile and stay strong when they know this might be their last Christmas with their child?" At 8 a.m., Sarah was in the nurse's station doing paperwork when the receptionist called. "Sarah, there's someone here to see the children. Says he has Christmas presents. Should I send him up?" "Who is it?" Sarah asked. They were careful about visitors, especially with immunocompromised children. "He says his name is Elvis Presley." Sarah dropped her pen. "What?" "Elvis Presley. He's in the lobby with presents. He wants to visit the children." Sarah ran to the elevator. When the doors opened on the ground floor, there he was. Elvis Presley in a black suit and red Santa hat, carrying bags full of wrapped presents, his guitar case by his side. "Mr. Presley?" Sarah said, still not quite believing what she was seeing. "Ma'am, I hope it's okay that I'm here. I should have called ahead, but I wanted to surprise the kids. I brought presents. Is it okay if I visit with them?" "Of course. Yes. The children will be thrilled, but we have to be careful. Some of them have compromised immune systems. You'll need to wash your hands thoroughly, and we can't let you visit the children who are in isolation." "Whatever you need me to do," Elvis said. "I'm here to help however I can." The first room. The first child Elvis visited was a 7-year-old boy named Tommy. He had acute lymphoblastic leukemia and had been at St. Jude for 3 months. Tommy was in bed, weak from chemotherapy. his mother sitting in a chair beside him, reading Christmas stories. Sarah knocked gently on the door. "Tommy, you have a visitor." Elvis walked in carrying a wrapped present and his guitar. He took off the Santa hat and smiled. "Hi, Tommy. My name is Elvis. I heard you're spending Christmas here, so I brought you a present." Tommy's mother gasped. You're Elvis Presley." "Yes, ma'am." Elvis walked to Tommy's bedside and held out the present. "Merry Christmas, Tommy." Tommy was too weak to sit up fully, so his mother helped him. He took the present with thin, shaking hands and slowly unwrapped it. Inside was a toy car, a detailed model of a 1962 Cadillac, just like the ones Elvis drove. "Wow," Tommy whispered. "It's so cool." "You like cars?" Elvis asked, pulling up a chair to sit beside the bed. "I love cars. When I get better, I want to be a race car driver." "That's a great dream," Elvis said gently. "You work on getting better, and maybe someday you'll race that Cadillac." Tommy looked at the toy car, then at Elvis. "Are you really Elvis Presley? The Elvis Presley?" "I really am." "Why are you here? Don't you have somewhere better to be on Christmas?" Elvis's voice got quiet. "There's nowhere I'd rather be than here with you, buddy. My mama died a few years ago, and I've been real sad. But she always taught me that when you're sad, the best thing to do is help someone else. So I came here to spend Christmas with kids like you who need a friend." Tommy's mother started crying quietly. Elvis noticed and reached over to squeeze her hand. "It's okay. We're all going to have a good Christmas today." Elvis picked up his guitar. "Tommy, do you like music?" "I love music, especially your music." "Well then, how about I play you a Christmas song?" For the next 15 minutes, Elvis sat in that hospital room and played Christmas carols for Tommy and his mother. He sang Silent Night and Oh Holy Night and White Christmas, his voice filling the small room with warmth and beauty. When he finished, Tommy was smiling, the first real smile his mother had seen in weeks. "Thank you," Tommy said. "That was the best Christmas present ever." "You're welcome, Tommy. You keep fighting, okay? You're strong. I can tell." Elvis hugged Tommy gently, careful not to disturb any tubes or wires, then moved on to the next room. He would spend the next 6 hours doing the same thing in room after room with the girl who couldn't speak. In room 4012, Elvis met a 5-year-old girl named Maria. She had a brain tumor that had affected her ability to speak. She could understand everything people said to her, but she couldn't form words to respond. Maria's parents had come from Mexico for treatment at St. Jude. They spoke limited English, and the language barrier made everything harder. Maria's mother, Rosa, sat by her daughter's bed, holding her hand, trying not to cry on Christmas morning. When Elvis walked in, Rosa looked confused. She didn't know who Elvis Presley was. She'd been in America for less than 6 months, focused entirely on her daughter's treatment. "Feliz Navidad," Elvis said in Spanish. His Spanish wasn't great, but he'd learned some phrases during his travels. "I'm Elvis. I came to visit Maria." Rosa's face brightened a bit. "Navidad? Christmas?" "Sí, Christmas." Elvis held out a wrapped present for Maria. Maria looked at the present, then at Elvis. She couldn't speak, but her eyes showed curiosity. Elvis sat down and handed her the present. She unwrapped it slowly to find a beautiful doll with dark hair and a red dress. Maria hugged the doll to her chest, and even though she couldn't speak, the smile on her face said everything. "You like it?" Elvis asked. Maria nodded enthusiastically. Elvis pulled out his guitar. "Music doesn't need words," he said to Rosa. "It's a language everyone understands." He started playing softly, not singing at first, just letting the music fill the room. He played Ave Maria, a song he knew had religious significance in Hispanic culture. Maria watched him play, clutching her new doll, swaying slightly to the music. Then, something incredible happened. Maria started humming, just quietly, just a soft melody matching Elvis's guitar, but it was sound, it was music, it was her voice. Rosa gasped and started crying. "She's singing. She hasn't made any sounds in 2 months." Elvis kept playing, encouraging Maria with his eyes, letting her find her voice through the music. Maria hummed through the entire song, her small voice fragile but real. When Elvis finished playing, he had tears in his eyes. "That was beautiful, Maria. You have a gift." Maria couldn't say thank you in words, but she reached out and touched Elvis's hand, and that was enough. The teenager who'd given up. In room 315, Elvis met a 15-year-old boy named James. He had osteosarcoma, bone cancer, and had undergone multiple surgeries. The doctors had finally told James's parents that there was nothing more they could do. James had maybe 3 months to live. James knew he was dying, and he decided to stop fighting. When Elvis walked into his room, James barely looked up. "I'm not interested in presents or Christmas cheer," James said bitterly. "Just leave me alone." Elvis set down the present he'd brought and sat in the chair beside James's bed. "Mind if I sit here anyway?" It's a free country. You're James, right? Yeah, I'm Elvis. I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. Elvis was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I lost my mother 4 years ago. She died suddenly. I didn't get to say goodbye properly. James looked at Elvis for the first time. I'm sorry. Thank you. It's been really hard. Some days I don't want to get out of bed. Some days I don't see the point of anything. So why are you here? Why aren't you home being sad? Because being sad by myself doesn't help anyone, but maybe being here helps you, or helps the other kids, or helps me remember that I'm not the only one going through hard things. James was quiet. Then he said, the doctors told my parents I'm going to die. They tried to hide it from me, but I heard them talking. I've got 3 months, maybe less. I'm sorry, James. That's not fair. No, it's not. And everyone keeps trying to make me feel better with stupid presents and fake cheer, like a toy car is going to make me forget I'm dying. You're right, Elvis said. Presents don't fix what you're going through. Nothing fixes that. But you know what? You've got 3 months, maybe less, maybe more. Doctors don't know everything. What do you want to do at that time? What do you mean? I mean, you can spend 3 months being angry and sad and pushing everyone away, which is totally fair. You've earned the right to be angry. Or you can spend 3 months doing things that matter to you, things that make your time meaningful, not for anyone else, for you. James thought about this. I don't know what matters anymore. Everything seems pointless when you're dying. Elvis picked up his guitar. Can I play you something? I guess. Elvis played How Great Thou Art. Not the big, showy version he'd perform on stage, but a quiet, intimate version. Just a man with a guitar, singing about faith and hope and the mysteries of life and death. When he finished, James had tears running down his face. My grandmother used to sing that song before she died. Tell me about your grandmother, Elvis said. For the next 45 minutes, James and Elvis talked about James's grandmother, about faith and doubt and fear and anger, about what it means to live when you know you're dying, about making peace with the things you can't control. I don't have answers for you, Elvis finally said. I don't know why bad things happen to good people. I don't know why your grandmother died or why my mother died or why you're sick, but I know that your life matters. The time you have left matters, and how you spend it is up to you. James was quiet for a long time. Then he said, there's a girl at my school, Rebecca. I've liked her since 6th grade, but I never told her because I was too scared. If I'm dying anyway, maybe I should tell her. At least then I won't die wondering what she would have said. Elvis smiled. That sounds like a great plan. You want me to help you write her a letter? Really? Really? Elvis pulled out a piece of paper and a pen from his jacket. Together, he and James wrote a letter to Rebecca. It was honest and vulnerable and heartfelt. When they finished, Elvis said, I'll make sure this gets mailed. And James, whatever happens, you did something brave today. You decided to live your remaining time instead of just waiting to die. Your grandmother would be proud. James nodded, crying but smiling at the same time. Thank you, Elvis. For real. The playroom. After visiting individual rooms for 3 hours, Elvis went to the playroom where some of the healthier children were gathered. There were about 12 kids there, ranging in age from 4 to 14, all in various stages of treatment. A small, sad-looking Christmas tree sat in the corner. A few decorations hung on the walls. The staff had tried to make it festive, but it was clear that Christmas in a hospital was never going to feel quite right. When Elvis walked in with his guitar and bags of presents, the room exploded with excitement. The kids who could stand jumped up. The ones in wheelchairs wheeled closer. Everyone was suddenly alert and animated in a way the nurses hadn't seen in weeks. Merry Christmas, everyone, Elvis said. I heard you all are spending Christmas at St. Jude, so I brought presents and music. Who wants to help me hand out gifts? Every hand in the room went up. For the next hour, Elvis distributed presents, toys, books, games, stuffed animals. He'd brought enough for every child on the ward, plus extras. He sat with each kid, asked their names, asked about their interests, made them feel seen and special. Then he played music, Christmas carols at first, Jingle Bells, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, songs the kids could sing along to. Then some of his own hits, Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel, which got the kids laughing and dancing as much as they were able. A little girl in a wheelchair named Emma asked, "Can you play Blue Christmas? That's my favorite." Elvis knelt down beside her wheelchair. "That's a sad song. You sure you want to hear it on Christmas?" "It's not sad to me," Emma said. "It makes me think about my dad. He's deployed overseas. I won't see him until next year if I make it that long." Elvis's heart broke. "You're going to make it that long, Emma. And you know what? I'm going to dedicate this song to your dad." "What's his name?" "Sergeant Robert Hayes." Elvis stood up and addressed the room. "This next song is dedicated to Sergeant Robert Hayes, Emma's dad, who's serving our country overseas. We're thinking about you, Sergeant Hayes. Your daughter loves you and misses you." Elvis played Blue Christmas, while Emma cried and smiled at the same time. When the song ended, every child in the room applauded, and several nurses standing in the doorway were wiping tears. Have you ever spent a holiday doing something for others instead of celebrating with your own family? Something that made that day meaningful in a completely different way? Share your story in the comments. Let's honor the people who give their holidays to help others. The Parents' Lounge. While Elvis was in the playroom with the children, word had spread through the hospital. Parents of other patients started gathering in the Parents' Lounge, hoping to catch a glimpse of Elvis, hoping maybe he'd talk to them too. When Elvis finished with the children and walked past the lounge, he saw about 20 parents sitting there, exhausted, worried, trying to hold it together for their kids. Elvis stopped and walked into the lounge. "Hi folks, Merry Christmas. Mind if I sit with you for a bit?" The parents made room, and Elvis sat down among them like he was just another person, not a celebrity. "This must be the hardest Christmas of your lives," Elvis said gently. "Having your children in the hospital, not knowing what's going to happen, trying to stay strong for them while you're falling apart inside." Several parents started crying. One mother said, "How did you know?" "Because I lost my mother 4 years ago," Elvis said. "And I know what it's like to try to stay strong while you're breaking. I see it in your faces. You're all heroes for being here, for fighting alongside your kids." For the next 30 minutes, Elvis sat with those parents. He didn't offer false hope or empty platitudes. He just listened. He let them talk about their fears, their exhaustion, their guilt over not being able to fix their children's illnesses. He shared his own grief about losing his mother. He talked about how hard it was to accept that sometimes bad things happen and there's nothing you can do to stop them. "But you're doing everything you can," Elvis said. "You're here. You're loving your children through the hardest thing they'll ever face. That matters more than you know." One father said, "Mr. Presley, why are you here? You could be anywhere in the world on Christmas. Why a children's hospital?" Elvis thought about the question. "Because my mother taught me that when you're blessed, you have a responsibility to help others. I've been given a gift, music, a voice, a platform. If I can't use that to bring joy to children who are suffering, then what's the point of any of it? I'd rather be here making sick kids smile than at any fancy party or celebration." The nurse's perspective. The nurses at St. Jude watched Elvis's entire visit with amazement. This wasn't a quick photo op. This wasn't a celebrity showing up for 30 minutes to feel good about themselves. Elvis spent 6 hours at the hospital, from 8 a.m. until 2 p.m., visiting every single child who was well enough to receive visitors. Nurse Sarah Mitchell later said in an interview, "We'd had celebrity visitors before. They'd come in, take some pictures, sign some autographs, and leave after 20 minutes. But Elvis was different. He sat with dying children and talked to them about real things. He held hands with crying parents. He played music for kids who couldn't speak. He made every single person in that hospital feel like they mattered, and he cried. I watched Elvis Presley cry multiple times that day, when Maria hummed along to his music, when James talked about his grandmother, when a little boy told him he was scared of dying. Elvis didn't hide his emotions. He let these families see that he was human, that he hurt too, that their pain mattered to him. That's not celebrity charity. That's compassion. Another nurse, Patricia Romano, said, "The children's spirits lifted that day in a way I'd never seen before. Kids who'd been too depressed to eat suddenly wanted lunch. Kids who'd been unresponsive to treatment suddenly had hope. I'm not saying Elvis cured anyone. Medicine does that. But he gave them something medicine can't give. Joy, hope, a reason to keep fighting." One little girl told me after Elvis left, "If Elvis Presley thinks I'm worth visiting on Christmas, maybe I'm worth saving." That's the impact he had. He made dying children feel valuable. The gift Elvis didn't know. He gave. Elvis left St. Jude around 2 p.m. on Christmas afternoon. He was emotionally exhausted, his eyes red from crying, his voice hoarse from hours of singing and talking. As he walked to his car, Nurse Sarah ran after him. "Mr. Presley, wait!" Elvis turned. "Is everything okay?" "More than okay," Sarah said, slightly out of breath. "I wanted to tell you, after you left the playroom, the children were different. Emma, the girl whose dad is deployed, she ate a full meal for the first time in a week. Tommy, the boy with leukemia, he told his mother he's going to fight harder because Elvis believes in him. Maria, the little girl who couldn't speak, she's been humming all afternoon. You didn't just give these children presents. You gave them hope. You gave their parents strength to keep fighting. You reminded all of us why we do this work." Elvis's eyes filled with tears again. "That's the best Christmas present I could have received. Thank you for telling me." "No, thank you," Sarah said, "for spending your Christmas with us, for seeing these children as children, not as patients or diseases, for treating them like they matter." "They do matter," Elvis said simply. "Every single one of them matters." What happened after Elvis's visit to St. Jude on Christmas 1962 was kept relatively quiet. A few local news outlets reported it, but Elvis specifically asked that no photographers be present and no big publicity be made of the visit. This wasn't about PR, it was personal, but the impact of that visit rippled through St. Jude for years. Tommy, the 7-year-old with leukemia, survived. His cancer went into remission, and he lived to be 64 years old. He kept the toy Cadillac Elvis gave him on his desk for his entire life. When he died in 2015, his family donated that toy car to St. St. Jude, where it's displayed with a plaque. This toy was given to Tommy by Elvis Presley on Christmas 1962. Tommy credited that visit with giving him the will to fight his cancer. He survived and lived a full life. Maria, the little girl who couldn't speak, gradually regained her ability to talk through intensive speech therapy. She became a music teacher, crediting that Christmas morning when Elvis's music helped her find her voice again. She taught music for 40 years and always told her students about the day Elvis Presley sang to her. James, the 15-year-old who'd given up, lived for 8 more months instead of the predicted 3. He did tell Rebecca about his feelings. She came to visit him at the hospital, and they spent his remaining months together. James's mother said years later, "Elvis gave my son permission to live his final months instead of just waiting to die. That gift was priceless." Not all the children Elvis visited that day survived. Several died within months, but their parents all said the same thing. Elvis's visit gave their children joy in their final days. It gave them a Christmas they'd remember, even if it was their last. The tradition begins. Elvis returned to St. Jude every Christmas after 1962 when he was in Memphis. It became an annual tradition that he continued until his death in 1977. Sometimes he came alone. Sometimes he brought other performers. He always brought presents. He always brought his guitar, and he always spent hours with the children, never rushing, never treating it like an obligation. Danny Thomas, the founder of St. Jude, became friends with Elvis through these visits. In a 1975 interview, Danny said, "Elvis understood what St. Jude is about. It's not just about treating diseases. It's about giving children hope, giving families strength to keep fighting." Elvis embodied that every Christmas. He gave these children something beyond medicine. He gave them joy, dignity, a reason to believe that life is worth fighting for. After Elvis died in 1977, his estate continued the tradition. Every Christmas, someone from Graceland visits St. Jude with presents and music in Elvis's honor. The tradition has continued for over 40 years, the documentary that told the truth. In 2012, on the 50th anniversary of Elvis's first St. Jude visit, the hospital released footage that had been kept private for decades. A staff member had filmed parts of Elvis's 1962 visit with a home movie camera. The silent footage showed Elvis playing guitar in the playroom, sitting with children in hospital beds, hugging crying parents. The footage was included in a documentary called Elvis: The Christmas Gift. The documentary also featured interviews with now elderly survivors who'd met Elvis that Christmas, as well as children of patients who'd died but whose final days had been brightened by Elvis's visit. One interview was particularly moving. Emma, the little girl whose father had been deployed, was now 55 years old. She said, "I was in a wheelchair that Christmas, dying of leukemia. My father was overseas and couldn't be with me. I thought it was the worst Christmas possible. Then Elvis Presley walked in and played Blue Christmas just for me, dedicating it to my dad. In that moment, I felt loved. I felt seen. I felt like maybe I was going to be okay. I survived. My father came home. And I've spent my entire life trying to be for other people what Elvis was for me that day, someone who sees suffering and does something about it." The letter Elvis never sent. After Elvis died, his estate went through his personal papers. They found an unsent letter dated December 26, 1962, the day after his St. Jude visit. It was written to his mother, even though she'd been dead for 4 years. The letter said, "Dear Mama, I spent Christmas at the children's hospital like you would have wanted me to. I met kids who are fighting for their lives. I met parents who are trying to be strong even though they're breaking inside. I played music for them. I gave them presents. I tried to make them smile. Mama, I still miss you so much. The holidays are hard without you, but spending it with those kids helped. It reminded me that I'm not the only one hurting, that suffering is part of life for everyone, and that the best thing we can do when we're hurting is help someone else who's hurting too. You taught me that. You taught me that we're all in this together, that we have a responsibility to help each other, that being blessed means using your blessings to bless others. I hope I made you proud today, Mama. I hope wherever you are, you saw what I did and you smiled. I love you. I miss you. I'm trying to live the way you taught me. Your son, Elvis." That letter was displayed at Graceland for several years. Visitors would read it and cry. It revealed something about Elvis that many people didn't know. His generosity wasn't for show. It was personal. It was how he honored his mother's memory. It was how he processed his own grief by helping others through theirs. December 25, 1962, a famous singer was still grieving his mother 4 years after her death. He could have stayed home, wallowed in his pain, treated Christmas as just another sad day. Instead, he went to a children's hospital. He spent 6 hours with dying children and their terrified parents. He played music. He gave presents. He cried with them. He gave them hope when they had none. Elvis didn't do this for publicity. He specifically asked for no photographers, no media coverage. He did it because his mother had taught him that being blessed means using your blessings to help others. That's the real measure of character. Not what you do when cameras are watching. What you do when nobody's watching. What you do when you're hurting and could use that as an excuse to stay home. What you do with your gifts when you have the choice to use them for yourself or for others. Elvis chose others. On a day when his grief was still fresh, he chose to make other people's Christmas better. And because of that choice, Tommy fought his leukemia and survived. Maria found her voice again through music. James spent his final months truly living instead of just dying. Emma felt loved when she felt most alone. Dozens of children had hope restored. Dozens of parents found strength to keep fighting. And a hospital full of suffering people experienced joy on a day when joy seemed impossible. That's what one person can do with 6 hours and a willing heart. You might not be Elvis Presley. You might not have his voice or his fame, but you have something. A skill, a gift, time, presence, something you could use to bring joy to someone who's suffering. The question is, will you? Will you spend your next holiday helping someone who has nothing to celebrate? Will you visit someone who's alone? Will you use your gifts, whatever they are, to make someone else's hard day a little easier? Because that's what heroes do. That's what Elvis did. And that's what we should all aspire to do. Not because we'll get credit, not because anyone will know, but because it's the right thing to do, because people are suffering and we have the power to help, because using our blessings to bless others is what gives life meaning. Elvis taught us that on Christmas 1962, and 23 children at St. Jude learned it too. Now, it's our turn to learn it and live it. Subscribe to Elvis Presley Legacy Stories to discover more moments that prove the best use of gifts is giving them away. Share this story with someone who works with children or someone who volunteers during holidays. Let them know their work matters. And this Christmas, or whatever holiday you celebrate, consider spending it with people who have nothing to celebrate. Bring your gifts, bring your presents, bring joy to people who need it most, because that's what Elvis did. And look at the impact it had. Look at the lives changed. Look at the hope restored. Your presence could do the same thing for someone who desperately needs it. So the question is, will you show up?